I've always believed every town has its quiet secrets, but some places, they carry a different kind of silence. The kind that makes you lower your voice without knowing why. While traveling across the US, I came across small towns where people refuse to talk about certain things: strange disappearances, lights in the woods, shadows that don't match the shape of anything living. Locals avoid eye contact, change the subject, or simply walk away. And that's when you realize these stories aren't just rumors, they're warnings. Today, I'm taking you inside the 5 towns no one wants to speak about. Don't miss out on more real-life creepy stories. Hit that subscribe button and join me on this journey into the unknown. 1. Centralia, Pennsylvania. I remember the first time I walked into Centralia. It didn't feel like I was entering a town. It felt like I was stepping into someone's abandoned memory. The road leading in was cracked like broken glass, and thin lines of smoke were slipping through the ground as if the earth itself was breathing. I stopped my car for a moment, rolled the window down, and the air that came in was warm, warmer than it should have been on a cold morning. It smelled faintly like burning metal and something older, something trapped underground for too long. As I kept walking, the silence felt unnatural. No voices, no passing cars, not even birds. Just the soft hum coming from somewhere deep below my feet. I tried not to think about the fire that's been burning beneath this town for over 60 years, but every few steps reminded me. The ground felt hollow in certain places, like a thin shell covering a secret you're not supposed to disturb. I reached an empty street, houses on both sides, some half collapsed, others standing as if waiting for their owners to return. Paint peeling, doors hanging open, curtains frozen in place by dust. I remember standing there wondering what it must have felt like for families who woke up one day and realized their home wasn't safe anymore. To look at your living room, your kitchen, your photo frames, and then walk away forever. A sudden shift under my shoe made my heart jump. The soil moved just slightly, like it sighed. I stepped back fast. For a second, I could feel the heat rising through the cracks. Not enough to burn, but enough to warn. I kept walking until I reached the old graffiti-covered highway. Mist rolled over the asphalt, and every few seconds, a puff of smoke would twist upward and vanish. Something about that moment felt personal, like I wasn't alone, like the town was aware of me. I won't lie, a small shiver ran up my spine even though the air was warm. Before leaving, I looked back one more time. Centralia didn't feel evil. It felt abandoned, yes, but also wounded, like a place that once tried to survive but couldn't fight what was happening underneath. And standing there, I realized something. You don't need ghosts to make a town creepy. Sometimes the real horror is a disaster that never stops burning. 2. Helltown, Boston Township, Ohio. I still remember the moment I turned off the main road and entered Helltown. The sunlight behind me felt normal, warm, but the deeper I went, the more it changed. The air felt heavier, the trees thicker, and the silence sharper, like the whole place was waiting for something. I had heard stories about the sudden evacuation in the 1970s, how families were forced to leave overnight, but standing there made those stories feel painfully real. The first thing that caught my eye was an old church, its windows boarded up and its paint peeling in long strips. I walked closer, and the wooden steps creaked under my weight, a sound so loud in the silence that it made my chest tighten. I tried the door, it didn't open. But the moment I touched it, I felt a strange chill crawl across my arm. Maybe it was nothing, but it felt too sharp to ignore. As I moved deeper into the town, the trees almost felt like they were closing in. The road grew narrow, twisting into a long, empty stretch with no houses, no signs, nothing but forest. I kept walking, telling myself it was just an abandoned place, until I reached the part locals call the end of the world. The road suddenly dipped downward, a steep drop that looked even worse in person. Fog drifted across it like something alive, curling and shifting around my legs. I stood there for a long minute, listening. At first, I thought it was just the wind, but then I heard something else, soft footsteps somewhere behind me. Slow. Steady. I turned around immediately, heart racing, but the road behind me was empty. Not a single person. Not even a shadow. The sound stopped the second I moved. I forced myself to keep walking, but every step felt heavier. The forest on the sides looked too still, like it was holding its breath. At one point, I swear I smelled smoke, fresh, like someone had just put out a fire, but there was nothing around. No campsite, no ashes, nothing. By the time I reached the end of the trail, my nerves were tight. Helltown didn't feel like a normal abandoned place. It felt like something had been interrupted here, like the town still remembered the moment everyone left, and never quite recovered. When I finally stepped back into the sunlight at the edge of the forest, it felt like escaping from a place that wasn't meant to be visited. Even now, when I think about those footsteps and that cold feeling on my arm, I can't shake the thought that maybe the stories people avoid talking about exist for a reason. 3 Dudleytown, Connecticut. I didn't plan to stay long in Dudleytown. Honestly, the closer I got to the entrance of the forest, the more my hands kept tightening around the straps of my backpack. There's no official signboard that says you've reached the place, but you feel it. The trees grow thicker, the path turns darker, and the air becomes strangely quiet, as if sound itself refuses to enter this part of Connecticut. The moment I stepped onto the old trail, I felt something I can't really explain. It wasn't fear, not exactly. It was more like walking into a memory that didn't belong to me. The forest was still, too still, and every step I took seemed louder than it should have been. Dry leaves cracked under my shoes like glass. I kept moving deeper, telling myself it was just an abandoned settlement, until I reached the first set of old stone foundations. Just broken walls, covered in moss. But standing there, I could almost imagine people once living here, tiny cabins, smoke rising from chimneys, kids running around. Now, nothing. No voices. No birds. Not even wind. Then, out of nowhere, a sudden drop in temperature hit me. The kind of cold that doesn't feel natural. It started from the back of my neck and rushed down my spine so fast that I actually turned around, expecting someone to be behind me. But there was no one. Just trees, standing too close, like silent witnesses. I tried to brush it off and kept walking. But the deeper I went, the more the silence felt wrong. At one point, I stopped because I thought I heard something, very faint, like whispers drifting through the branches. It was so soft that I couldn't tell if it came from the left or the right. I held my breath to listen again, and everything went quiet instantly, like whatever it was knew I heard it. My heartbeat kicked up, but I forced myself to keep moving. The trail opened into a small clearing, the largest part of the old village. Stone foundations everywhere, forming strange little shapes around me. I stood in the middle, and I don't know why, but I suddenly felt watched. Not by an animal. Not by a person. It felt older than that. Like the land itself was aware of me. I tried to take a few photos, but my hands were shaking more than I wanted to admit. When I finally turned to leave, I heard something again, this time clearer. A quick crunch of leaves, as if someone took a single step right behind me. I didn't run, but I walked faster than I ever have in my life. Stepping out of the forest felt like breaking through a barrier. The warmth returned, the sounds came back, and I could finally breathe normally again. Even now, thinking back to that cold drop, those whispers, and that final step behind me. I understand why locals don't talk about Dudleytown. Some places don't need ghosts to feel cursed. Sometimes the silence alone is enough. For Bodie, California. I reached Bodie just after sunrise, when the light was soft enough to make everything look almost frozen in place. The road leading in was rough, covered with dust that rose behind my car like a thin ghost following me. The moment I stepped out, the air felt different, dry, cold, and strangely quiet, as if the whole town had been holding its breath for years. Walking into Bodie felt like walking into a photograph. Every building stood exactly the way it must have looked decades ago, but there was something unsettling in the stillness. I pushed open the door of an old house, and it creaked in a slow, tired way that made my chest tighten. Inside, the kitchen table still had plates on it, like the people who lived here had stepped outside for a moment and never came back. Dust covered everything, but there was a weird sense of life in the room, like the silence remembered the voices. As I walked through the town, the wind picked up. It wasn't strong, just enough to make the loose boards tap against each other. The sound echoed down the empty street, and for a second it felt like footsteps coming from behind me. I turned quickly, heart jumping, but there was no one. Just the long wooden sidewalk stretching into silence. I kept exploring. The schoolhouse was the part that hit me the hardest. Looking through the dusty windows, I could still see writing on the chalkboard, faded, but visible. Books were scattered across the desks, untouched. Standing there, I couldn't stop imagining kids running around this place, shouting, laughing, and now it was nothing but a cold room that smelled like old paper and time. On my way to the old church, something strange happened. I passed by a house and felt a sudden chill on my right side, like someone had walked past me quickly. The wind wasn't blowing. The air was still. But for a moment, I felt movement, sharp, sudden, and completely out of place. I stopped walking, trying to convince myself that it was nothing, but the feeling lingered just long enough to make me uneasy. The church door wouldn't open, so I sat on the steps for a minute. The silence there felt heavier than anywhere else in the town. People say Bodhi has a curse, that taking anything from the town brings bad luck. I didn't believe it before, but sitting there, feeling the weight of the place around me, I started to understand why people leave everything untouched. When I finally walked back to my car, I felt like someone was watching from behind one of the dark windows. Not in a threatening way, more like a presence that didn't want to be forgotten. Bodhi isn't just abandoned. It feels paused. Like time stepped away for a moment and never returned. I left with a strange mix of sadness and tension in my chest, and a feeling that the town wasn't entirely empty. 5 Blackwell, Oklahoma. I arrived in Blackwell on a cold, gray afternoon, the kind of weather that makes every empty place feel even emptier. The town looked normal from far away, but the moment I stepped out of my car near the old zinc smelter, everything changed. The air felt heavier, almost metallic, as if the ground itself was exhaling something old and forgotten. I took a slow breath, and even that felt strange, like the air wasn't meant to be breathed for too long. Walking toward the abandoned smelter building, the wind pushed small clouds of dust across my shoes. The huge rusted towers stood above me like broken skeletons. One of them creaked loudly, and the sound echoed in a way that made my heartbeat spike for no reason. I tried telling myself it was just metal shifting in the wind, but it didn't feel like that. It felt sharper. More deliberate. I followed a cracked path down to a row of small houses where the workers used to live. Some doors were missing, some hanging by a single hinge. Inside one house, I found a child's shoe lying in the middle of the floor, covered in dust but untouched, like someone placed it there and never came back. That one small thing made the whole place feel painfully real. I kept picturing families leaving in a hurry when the contamination got worse, leaving behind things they planned to return for, but never did. As I moved deeper into the neighborhood, I heard something that made me freeze. A faint tapping sound coming from inside one of the houses. Slow, steady, like someone gently knocking on a wall. I waited, trying to see if it was just the wind hitting loose wood, but the rhythm was too perfect. 3 taps. A pause. Then 2 more. I stepped back without even realizing it, my throat tightening. When I tried to look through the window, all I saw was darkness. I didn't go inside. I couldn't. That sound felt too close, too aware. When I reached the edge of the smelter again, the sun was going down. The whole sky turned orange, and the shadows stretched across the ground like long dark fingers. Standing there, I felt something strange, like the town wasn't just abandoned, it was waiting. The silence wasn't empty, it felt full, almost crowded, as if the past was still walking around the ruins. As I walked back to my car, I kept glancing behind me, half expecting to see someone standing in one of the doorways. But there was no one, just the wind, the dust, and the quiet reminder that some towns don't die cleanly. Blackwell felt like a place that remembers everything. Even the things people don't talk about anymore.